Hello and welcome to Starburst Magazine. I am James Magic Perkins, and today I am joined by a very special guest. For those of you that have played Supermassive Games' latest horror epic, The Quarry, you will know her as the badass camp counselor, Laura Kearney, the one and only Miss Siobhan Williams.
Hello.
Hello, Siobhan. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, James. I'm really happy to be here.
Fantastic. So huge congratulations on the release of The Quarry. It's out now on consoles and PC, pretty much everything, which is great for fans of horror. So we here at Starburst gave it a 5 out of 5 in our official review. We absolutely loved it. How has the reaction been for you from fans?
So overwhelmingly great. It's so nerve-wracking to work on something, especially something that you work on for a few years that is kept so confidential for so long. And it was such a relief and yet so nerve-wracking to put it out into the world. And I've just been so happy with the amount of love that the game has been getting and the amount of love that Laura's been getting. And I've just received so many sweet messages, and I'm so happy to see people enjoying it and getting psyched on it and playing it a gazillion times to get all of the different endings. And I love all the feedback so much.
Try and keep everyone alive as well, which is a lot more difficult than you might imagine. Believe me, I've played it through a few times now. I'm trying to go for an all survive run currently. So it'd be nice if I could get Laura to survive, which I have currently been unable to do so, unfortunately.
Really?
Both times she has met an untimely demise, but this time I'm hoping that'll change. I'm hoping I can get her to the end.
It's funny because you don't have the opportunity to kill her at all for a long period in the game, and then all of a sudden you get kind of close to the end, and it's like everything that you do will kill her.
Everything is thrown at you, literally. Yeah. So I just wanted to sort of start off this by asking you a bit about your history for those who may not be familiar with some of your work before the Quarry. I wanted to get a bit about your history in this wonderful industry. Where did your love of acting and singing, of course, because your song does feature as the closing credits of the game. Where did this all really begin for you? What were some of your key inspirations from an early age?
Well, I think that I always loved performing. I was a dancer from the time I was 3, so I was really into ballet and all different kinds of dance. And when I was 14, I started off in this program called the Professional Division at the School of Alberta Ballet, which is quite an intense program. It's 6 days a week. It's like 30 hours a week of dancing. And I was hoping to eventually go into the company that the school fed into. But of course, got injured, as every dancer does, especially ballerinas, and had to rethink my whole future. And I didn't come into acting until after that had happened. I just kind of fell into it, to be totally honest. I had a friend who was involved in it in the town that I grew up in, Calgary, Alberta. And I went and accompanied him and did some background work on set one day, and I just fell in love with it. I thought it was so cool. I couldn't believe that I got to have a free lunch and that the job was so fun and that I got paid at the end of the day. So I just sought out some classes and eventually got an agent, and that's how I got into it, and then got really lucky with my first role in Alberta. And as for singing, I'd been doing that a lot longer. So I probably honestly started writing songs when I was like 9 or 10. I remember recording them with a Fisher-Price tape recorder that was made for toddlers.
And I remember the one.
Yeah, with the white one with the red. Yeah. And so I would record songs with that, and I'd just play our piano, which I had no idea how to play, but I could hit keys and it sounded melodic to me. So that's something that I kept doing all throughout my teen years. And I kind of just wrote music, honestly, as like a form of venting and therapy, and just kind of getting out thoughts that I couldn't express otherwise. And so it took me a really long time to decide to release music because it had always been so incredibly personal for me. And it had never been something that I had designed to be shared. But I'd been dreaming about putting music out for forever. And I finally just decided, a year ago, it was time to pull the plug. So it happened. And I'm so happy that it's out there as well. And I definitely hope to make more of it. Yeah, as time goes on.
I didn't realize until obviously the credits came up. I was listening to the song, I thought it was wonderful, and then obviously seeing your name attached to it, it was like, wow, that's incredible. But no, I love that. Music is such an interesting medium, and like you kind of hit the nail on the head, it is a very personal thing. So I really do commend you for taking that leap, because it's one thing getting in front of the camera on a set, be it TV or film, but to then sort of take something that you have so lovingly crafted and share it with people must be a much more daunting experience than just, obviously performing is very daunting itself, but in a completely different capacity.
For sure, it's very vulnerable. I think that it also has, in some ways, kind of a higher payoff. I mean, I don't want to compare the two because they're completely different, but some of the messages that I've been getting about my music and what it's made people think of, or like the times it's helped them get through, it's really like a visceral thing that you can wrap your mind around and be like, oh wow, that actually really, really affected that person in a sort of a measurable way, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So I understand that the whole process of the Quarry, we'll get onto the Quarry now. The whole process of creating the game and being a part of it was about 4 years, which is obviously a very, very long time to be involved in a project, because with TV and film, it's usually a fairly quick turnaround in the grand scheme of things. But 4 years is a big chunk of time. How did you initially become involved with the game, and was the character of Laura always the character that you went for, or that they approached you to be to play? How did it all come about?
Yeah, so from my understanding, I think every actor that was cast in the game was an offer, and I think that most of them, it was that Will had seen other work of theirs and really liked them in it and thought that they'd be a good fit. So I know, like, for me, yeah, it was always Laura that they wanted me for. And I think that Will mentioned something about seeing me in this show I did called Deadly Class, which was a sci-fi show based on a graphic novel I did a few years ago. And so I think that's kind of what got him interested in me. And I was already a massive Until Dawn fan, and already knew who Will was, and Graham Resnick, the writer of Until Dawn as well. And so when they came to me with the offer, I was just like, yeah, absolutely. I will do anything in any capacity with you, and I will do it for free. Yeah, I was just so excited to work with both of them. And when I found out that it was kind of a spiritual successor to Until Dawn, I just could not believe it.
Yeah. I like I said earlier to you off air, I love how Until Dawn is such a fantastic experience from start to finish, and that everything that they've learned, they've taken and crafted something even more special. And that's going to be the case with their next game. They're going to learn from, maybe some people didn't find some parts of this particularly pleasing, and then they might tweak that. But for me, as I said at the start, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was the perfect package of dark humor, of horror, of drama, and yeah, and the technology that they use is just something completely like mind-blowing. How good it is. Seeing some of the seeing your performances come to life in this way is something that, when I started playing games almost 30 years ago, I didn't expect that we would get to this point where not only do some games have, the most interesting and compelling stories, but they also look as good as if you were just watching something on TV or in the cinema. So it's pretty special. So what was the going back to sort of the use of technology, and obviously doing mocap and working in person with the likes of Skylar, and Ted especially. What was the journey like getting to sort of play in that space, compared to the quote unquote traditional way of performing?
Yeah, so the process is so different in so many ways. On a pacing level, shooting a game is faster than anything else that you will ever shoot, because practically there are no cameras set up that need to be moved. There is no crew setup that needs to be moved. There's no set set up. Like all those pieces that you have to move in between shots and in between takes, and scenes in a film, or in a TV series, none of that exists. So you're removing all of that in between time. So you're just literally going from scene to scene to scene. And also most of the time they want to get everything in one take, because it gets really complicated when you're taking bits and pieces from different takes. The information that they're recording is so much more than what you're recording on a camera, even if it's 4K or 8K. So you want to get it all in one take. So honestly, we would do most scenes in 1 or 2 takes, and then it would be the next scene. So we were shooting like 40, 50 pages a day sometimes. So on that note, you have to be really, really prepared. And then on the other hand, you don't have a set, you don't have costumes, you have a weird helmet on your head that is a camera that shines directly into your face and like obscures your vision somewhat. So it takes a little bit of getting used to, and it takes a lot of imagination, but we were lucky enough to actually be able to see a lot of the environments that they created in real time. And actually not at the beginning when we were doing the prologue, but by the end of filming, every scene we came into, they would have TVs set up around the volume, and they would have the environments set for us, so we could actually kind of look around, and we could point this iPad at the eastern wall and see that's where that is, and oh, there's a table here, and all these things, so that you can kind of imagine what you're interacting with, which was really cool. Even to the point where there was this one just metal rod that was in the volume, and anything in the volume is invisible unless it has the sensors that the motion cameras detect. So this metal rod had sensors on it, and it was a flashlight. That's what it was, operated into the system as. So when I would hold this metal rod, it would literally illuminate what was happening on the TV in the direction that I was pointing it. It was so surreal. It's beyond me, all of this technology.
It's absolutely incredible, because like I said before, you are essentially playing a film here. You are making choices, and just walking around the environments, like I said, with the flashlights, is you feel as if you are the character, which games have always kind of attempted to cross that boundary and sort of get the audience into that mindset, but something like this really does achieve that on a much more technical level.
Cool.
So how was this project compared to other things that you've worked on in the past? Obviously, we've talked about the tech, but in terms of just like you mentioned the pacing, and how is the approach to getting things done, both behind the scenes and also for you as an actor as well? Because it must be a bit more of a challenge, obviously not having everything there to perform with, but how do you sort of get into that mindset?
Yeah. So for me, I did do a lot of prep work. I wanted to make sure that my character ended up in a very different place than she started off at. And because we shot over such a long period of time, we could be shooting one thing in 2019 and we could be shooting the next scene a year later. So you want to make sure you really have that emotional memory of where the character was at, and have everything laid out in your mind. So there was definitely a lot of prep work involved. And then also on the day, the crew is just so intimate, because it's really such a small team, and you feel really lucky to be kind of brought in as a part of the creative team, like Graham and the writers and the DP Amrit, and everyone at Digital Domain too, they gave us so much insight as to what they were doing and why they were doing it, that everything made a lot of sense, and you felt like you had a lot of creative input and a lot of room to play, a lot of room to improvise, which, so much of that is just kudos to Will. He really likes to give actors a lot of freedom, sometimes to the point where it's like, are you sure I'm making the game that you want me to make? Like, you're the guy. Yeah, we really got to have such a blast. And that's why working with Ted and Skylar also was so much fun, because there's constantly giving you so much to work with, and you can riff off of each other, and felt very, very real, despite existing in essentially a giant gymnasium of like scaffolding and fluorescent lights. You can really imagine what's going around you, what's going on around you, because the people that you're acting with are so invested, and so are all the creatives. So it's honestly so much easier than you would expect at the end of the day.
And you mentioned, Will gave you a lot of freedom to sort of develop these characters, whereas obviously he's had to, along with the other writers, had to meticulously craft something, considering that pretty much every single choice that you make will directly affect the outcome. And that's another thing that I love about the game, is that a lot of other games have attempted this, including Until Dawn, where you make a choice and you think, okay, how is that going to affect things? And it never really does play out. And then you get to the ending and you think, well, those moments that really felt quite big didn't pay off. But for this, I genuinely did feel that every single choice had some sort of consequence, be it in the immediate future of the characters, or be it much further down the line. There's moments throughout. I won't spoil it for the listeners that haven't played it, but the character of Emma, where there's a point where she can meet an untimely demise, which is quite cleverly sort of,
Yes,
in a meta way, telegraphed.
I felt that.
Genuinely piqued my, you know exactly which bit. Yeah, I genuinely piqued my curiosity, and I thought I kind of have to do that. And then she died. So yeah, that's just a testament to how good the writing is, because we're all, at this point, we're all veterans of how horror movies tend to play out, especially these kind of 80s nostalgic vibes, and camp counselors and creatures in the woods, and so yeah, Will and the team have done a cracking job with that. And you mentioned obviously working with Ted and Skylar, especially the prologue is so impactful, because we fall in love with Laura and Max so quickly, which is very hard to do a lot of the time. And I've seen a lot of your behind the scenes posts on social media, Instagram and Twitter, and I love the fact that friendships were formed on set. It really did feel like a family affair. And whenever I see these kind of relationships blossom on set, it's always great, because in the finished product, you genuinely feel that chemistry. And I also bet for you, it feels a lot less like a job and just doing something that you love. Is that how you feel?
Absolutely. It's so nice to be able to have that rapport with people, and you never know to what degree it's going to exist, if at all, because everybody's very different and everyone works really differently. Yeah, we all got along so great, and they are just both genuinely such humble, wonderful people, that it makes coming to work every day so exciting. I mean, same with everyone across the board. Will and everyone at Digital Domain, they were all like, the top of the cream of the crop, but they don't act like it at all. And they're also open-minded and such team players that it was really a dream. But yeah, Skylar and Ted, I would kill to work with both of them again. I would love to one day.
Well, hopefully that can come into fruition.
Yeah.
Hopefully, because yeah, just that opening prologue, that still sits sits with me. You know, I think whenever I think about the game, I think about how impactful that is. And when I recently spoke to the wonderful Ted Raimi, we were talking about the lighting is something that's very, very special in that game. That opening scene has such a thick and tense and exciting atmosphere. The moment he shows up, and then your interactions with him in the car, genuinely had me on edge. And it takes a lot for horror to do that for me, especially because I have grown up with it, and it takes something really special to sort of get under my skin. And that genuinely did that, you know, and that's a testament to your performance along with Skylar and Ted. It was something very, very special. So big congrats.
Thank you. I'm so happy to hear that. That's awesome. It's funny when you've already made it, you're playing it and there's zero suspense for me. So it's hard to be objective. So it's really, really nice to hear that.
And we've mentioned how much of a great character Laura is, obviously from her humble beginnings in prologue, and then she returns as an absolute badass in more ways than one. And that's I think that another thing that makes the Quarry stand out in amongst its peers is that all of the characters are great. They all have their faults, as do human beings in real life, but they also have a lot of pros to them. And usually in this kind of setting, be it a game or a film, there are usually a few people that you gravitate towards and some people that you are literally chomping at the bit to see them get killed off. I think probably the most like that is Emma, but I think Emma has a few redeeming qualities to her as well. But I found myself wanting to keep everyone alive from pretty much the moment I met them, which is really, really rare.
Nice.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to keep them all alive in my first playthrough. As we mentioned earlier, Laura did meet an untimely end. But when reading the script for the first time and obviously getting a description of the character when prepping, what was your favorite trait or thing about Laura when doing all the stuff in pre-production?
Well, I do remember reading that she wanted to become a vet, and I was very excited about that because I was like, Will, you have no idea how much the person you cast to play Laura loves animals. But it's not like that's a particularly like crazy quality. I mean, when we started the prologue, I actually really didn't have any idea of what Laura would turn into. We didn't get the script all at once. And in fact, I never saw the script for any scenes that I wasn't in. So the only portions that had other camp counselors in them that I was able to read were the scenes that I was also in, which was really nice when playing the game because I got to actually be in the dark about a lot of things and see things for the first time. But that also meant that I had no idea what direction Laura was going to go in. And Will did tell me when we did the prologue, he was kind of like, oh, you have no idea what's going to happen later on. And actually this happens. And he just kind of feed me little bits of information. I'd be like, what? No. And so more and more as I learned that, I was able to kind of play against it a little bit more in the beginning. But yeah, initially I just really wanted to play Laura as this smart woman who could dish it out as well as she could take it and wasn't taking any shit from her boyfriend, who was a bit of I'm not sure what the right word for him is. He's lovely, super lovely, but a bit unhelpful, I guess one could say. Yeah, I just wanted to play her really real. And then as the circumstances called for, as the game progressed, I just wanted her to be a really strong person who'd been hardened by her experiences and was strong enough to get through it. You know, when there's like a disaster happens and 50% or maybe 80% of people just go into shock and are completely useless. It's like Laura's not one of those people. She's the one who's gonna get stuff done and get to the bottom of it.
Well, a lot like the motto of the camp, what doesn't kill you will make you stronger. And I think especially what Laura goes through later in the game is something that really does define her character when it comes to the sort of the grand crescendo of everything. So you mentioned that you've played the game. Have you finished you've finished the game yourself? So I'm interested to see how many people you managed to keep alive.
So my first playthrough went about as well as my first playthrough of Until Dawn, which was terribly poor. I was like, I'm gonna keep everybody alive, and then I killed all my favorite characters. I think in my first playthrough I managed to I killed Emma right away, sadly, which was too bad because, like you said, I started off really being like, I can't wait to kill this girl, and then pretty quickly after I was like, oh man, there's so many more layers to her, and I actually really was so sad that I killed her. I felt like there was a lot left to be seen of her. And then I think in the end of that playthrough, I also killed Laura, which I was really mad about. And I tried to blame it on the game. I was like, I knew that was going to happen, but my controller slipped. I was confused. I don't know. And so I think I ended the game with almost Caitlin and Dylan, but they both died also terribly last minute. So I think it was like just Max maybe that survived, and Jacob and one other person.
Abby, was it?
Yeah, Abby. That's right.
That's pretty much that's exactly the same as me. Max, Jacob, and Abby in my first playthrough. Yeah. I was I really wanted to keep Caitlin alive. I really like Brenda Song.
For
sure.
Sure.
I was gutted. Yeah, I blame the game for that. It's definitely not my inability to use a firearm. But yeah, I learned from my mistake the second time through for sure.
Me too.
So like I said earlier, we love the Quarry here at Starburst, and I think that it's definitely a perfect blend of two great mediums in games and films. So as an actor going forward in your career, how excited are you to see these kind of experiences thrive and push forward the art of storytelling and the way that people can experience these stories?
I think it's so exciting. I mean, that's what got me hooked on Until Dawn the first time, because it's this strange, bridging the gap between a game and a movie. It's like a movie, but you're so much more invested because you know the character so much better, and you feel, like you said, that you are the character, and it's just a really neat immersion that you don't really get elsewhere, I think. So I hope that there's many more like this. I would love to be able to do more of that. And I mean, can you imagine a game like this in VR somehow in some capacity? Yes. It would almost be too much. Yeah, I think it's phenomenal. So hopefully there's lots more where that came from. It also just blows my mind too. I mean, the animation, like you said, is so good. I remember when I downloaded the game, I was like, man, they got all 4 years into 32 gigabytes. Hey, I was just like, that is so crazy to me. The amount of detail, it just blows my mind. So what they can do now with technology, the sky's the limit. I love to see what Supermassive does next.
Absolutely, yeah. It's crazy to think that about 15, 20 years ago to get 32 gigabytes, you would have to have the size of like several consoles just to get that much data. But now, everything just runs seamlessly with this tech. We are truly living in the future. But I'm sure Supermassive are cooking up something else incredible for their next title. I know that they're working on the second season of the Dark Pictures anthology, which is really exciting because there's so many great stories you can tell in this form. And obviously it gives a lot of actors like yourself the chance to, play around and do something, truly unique. So obviously that's what people know Supermassive are working on next. Obviously they're probably working on the next big sort of title like The Quarry. But what about yourself? Can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on next potentially? Obviously, I can understand if you can't talk about something.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of got a couple things that I can't really talk about at the moment.
Hmm.
But I'm very excited to see what the future has in store. We'll see. Hopefully it's more games. Not too sure. Would love to work with Supermassive again.
Hmm.
Um, maybe one day. Maybe one day. But yeah, I'll have some stuff to announce pretty shortly here, but not a whole lot that I can talk about at the moment.
That's cool. That's cool. No, that's exciting. Actually, that's kind of more exciting than actually knowing, because it just sort of teases you a little bit. It is super exciting. But I love that you're able to take the momentum from this and can continue your career, because you did a fantastic job on this. And yeah, I wish you all the success in the future. It's fantastic to speak with you. And thank you very much for taking the time today to talk with us.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, James. It was my pleasure.
Thank you.